Ida chapter 23. I went to dinner that night, all set for a tussle. I was feeling pretty confident after my victory that morning, and I was thinking I was ready to take on my most formidable foes, Mama and especially Daddy. Maybe there was no going back to the way things were before Mama was sick. For sure, there was no bringing back those trees that had been cut down. But that didn't mean there was no use in those two people feeling miserable about the sadness and destruction they and their completely unacceptable and breaking their word and 100% places decisions had brought into the valley and to me. That didn't mean I couldn't show them that there was somebody in the valley and in the house who remembered what was right and good, and her name was Ida B. Applewood. My cold, hard heart was in top form, and it was not taking prisoners, including sick ones, tired ones, or overburdened ones in particular. It was only going to accept complete surrender, which included a promise signed by all parties that would be valid for eternity and beyond, that things were going to change around here right that very minute. I had written the whole thing out that afternoon and had the document in my back pocket. We, the undersigned, it began, because I had looked that sort of thing up in the encyclopedia, solemnly promise that there will be no more selling of land, cutting of trees, killing of things, or sending children to school against their will, effective immediately. There was space for our signatures and the seal of Ida B's completely just and forever binding legal services in the lower right-hand corner. I'd planned a speech for Mama and Daddy too, and I had it all memorized. It started with, "I'm going to tell you two something right now, so you better listen up." Once I had their full and undivided attention, I'm going with questions like, "Don't you people care that everything has changed around here and it's gone from just about righter than right to a million miles beyond wrong? Don't you care that those trees got cut down and they're gone forever? And does it matter to you one half molecule that I am just plain miserable?" I was going to finish with a squinty-eyed skewer aimed directly at Daddy. "You said that we were the Earth's caretakers," I'd say. "You said we were supposed to leave things better than we found them. I don't think those trees got cut. I don't think those trees that got cut down would say you'd taken very good care of them. Do you?" Then, when the tears were flowing and apologies were coming at me from both sides, and Mama and Daddy were saying to me, "What should we do, Ida B? What do you think we should do now to try to make things right?" I would pull the document out of my back pocket. We would all sign it with my red pen to signify blood, but not for real. And we could start talking about a plan to get things back to normal around here. I was still hearing that "I won" in my head as I stomped into the kitchen, sat down, and served myself like always. When we were all done passing and pouring, I cleared my throat to get it ready for an army of words to pass through it. I put my hands on the table, looked at these two people sitting across from me, and opened my mouth wide so the words would come out big and fierce. And Mama cut me off. "Ida B, your daddy and I have something we want to talk to you about." My mouth was still wide open, but now it was hanging there out of surprise and a little dismay because I hadn't figured on an interruption. "Ida B," Daddy said, "we've been thinking about the south field that's been laying fallow for a while, and I thought that it might be a good place to plant some more apple trees. We were thinking that we could clear and plant it, the three of us, maybe this spring when I'm feeling better," Mama said, "and that maybe you'd like it to be your orchard, baby, just for you. It would be your land, your trees, your apples. What do you think, Ida B?" Now, first of all, when you get as worked up as I was, it doesn't just go away because somebody else starts talking. And second of all, I could see the plan those two had cooked up together, and I wasn't going to eat a bite of it. I wasn't going to pretend that planting new trees would replace the ones that got cut down. I wouldn't believe that Ida B's brand spanking new orchard was ever going to make me forget about Bernice or Winston or Jacques. And they're giving me a piece of land and some trees that I didn't even know yet was not going to erase the months of death and demolition and not enough love to fill a teacup that I'd been through. In about 1 1/3 seconds, my brain turned that big, long speech I'd spent all afternoon putting together into one sentence that came out of my mouth, long and strong. "There is no making up for the terrible things that happened this year," I said. And I thought that would be all, but it felt so good saying it, I kept going. "You can't bring back Winston or Bernice or buy me off with a new orchard," I said, my voice getting louder with every word. "And you can't make everything that's wrong right with a patch of land and some new trees. Now my hands were pointing and waving, and I got my eyes into the meanest slits I could manage. Then I thought of the hardest thing I could say to them. Oh, sorry. And how would I know you wouldn't sell the land anyway, I yelled. How do I know you wouldn't let those new trees get cut down too? You already broke your word in about 10 million ways when you sold the land and sent me back to school. So why should I trust you? And just like earlier in the day, I was breathing heavy and looking fierce. People were staring at me, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do next. But Daddy remedied that dilemma for me. He slammed his fork down so the table shook and the milk glasses jittered, and I jumped into my seat. His hands were clenched in fists. His face was red, and you could just about see the blood running fast through the big veins sticking out on his arms and the sides of his head. Without thinking about it, I was sitting up straight with my hands holding to the side of my chair, just in case he decided that my presence was no longer needed in that particular room and he was going to help me remove myself. Ida B., he said through his teeth without moving his lips, looking like he was talking to his plate, but he was talking to me. Well, when somebody's talking and his lips are not moving, it is not a good sign. I pushed my chair back and pointed my feet toward the door in case they needed to start running in that particular direction. Daddy took a deep breath. You could hear it go in through his nose, and he pushed it out through his teeth so it sounded like a hiss. Then he took another breath, and this one wasn't so loud. His color went from deep purple to medium magenta. He kept going with the breathing till his face got to light red, then bright pink, and he looked at me. Ida B., he said again with his palms flat on the table now. Since your mama got sick, sometimes I've been so angry I thought I could yell so loud and for so long that the mountain would turn into a pile of rocks. And sometimes I've been so sad I thought if I started crying, I might never stop. Daddy paused, but it was just to get some more of those cleansing breaths. None of us like what's happened around here, Ida B., but we're trying to make the best of it, he went on. If we stayed angry or sad all the time, things would still be hard, but we'd be miserable on top of it. He looked down at his plate again, and Mama put her hand on his arm and started rubbing it. I'd hardly moved an inch since Daddy slammed down his fork. I was still sitting there like a marble statue of distress, a patron saint of dread and dumbfoundedness. Mouth and eyes wide open, arms and legs sticking out, and everything as stiff as a board. Finally, Mama broke the silence. We know it's been hard, honey, she said, looking at me but holding on to Daddy. We probably should have talked about it more. I guess we got caught up in our own troubles and worries and figured talking about it wouldn't help you at all. She smiled and put her palm on my cheek like a cradle for my face. I'm sorry there have been so many hard changes, Ida B. We did what we thought was best, given the circumstances. Now a part of me knew that these people who were my mama and Daddy were trying their hardest to make things right. A part of me knew that they were telling me that they cared. About those trees, about the land, and about me. The same part of me knew that there was something called love sitting just across the table from me, a hug if I wanted it, and talking and trying, and warm feelings in the next moment if I'd just say, all right, even if I only whispered it. That part of me was too small now, though, and my heart had made it go live behind my left knee, so it didn't get much say. But my cold heart, hard heart did. It told me loud and clear, do not let these people in again. So I looked straight at Mama and Daddy, pushed back my chair, and put 1,000 miles between us. Without asking if I could be excused, I stood up, turned around, went to my room, and shut the door tight. Good job, my heart told me. You won again. But I woke up in the middle of the night with a terrible ache coming from behind my left knee, and it stayed with me the rest of the weekend. I want you to think about what she said was behind her left knee. And when she woke up in the middle of the night with a pain behind her left knee, what's she really talking about?